You read that title right. That's not a mistake. R is a color, but how? Well, stick around for today's episode. I'm John Paulus. You're listening to Life's Podluck Buffet, only on YouTube. I'm talking about phonetics, so sounds. Let me back it up. Yesterday, I was talking about the differences between the pronunciation of certain nouns and adjectives that are spelled the same, or certain nouns and verbs that are spelled the same. And we call those heteronyms. So, one example that I used was content and content. There's also record and record, and conduct and conduct. I didn't talk about that one yesterday, but there's another good example that holds up most of the time where you say that conduct is a type of behavior. Conduct is to lead. So, for example, you conduct an orchestra. That's what we describe the leading of an orchestra as conducting. So that's the verb form and its derived forms. Now, with a lot of these initial stress derived nouns, when the stress gets moved, the unstressed part becomes what is called a schwa. 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 And a schwa is a vowel sound that is exceedingly common in English. In fact, for people learning English coming from a language that doesn't have schwas, which is many languages and probably most languages and dialects of most languages don't tend to have schwas. There are a few examples. But it's interesting that the word schwa was taken from Hebrew, and the schwa in Hebrew is a vowel, and it's not, Hebrew doesn't normally write vowels, but there are, as is the case with other languages that don't write vowels, or most vowels, like Arabic, for example. The languages like that have systems of pointing, for example, is what you call it in Hebrew, where there are, you can put points over or below letters to inform the uninformed reader of what the vowel sounds are in a word. So speakers of these languages and writers of these languages don't generally need these because they know what the vowel sounds are. But if you don't know what the vowel sounds are, then this pointing helps you to understand what the vowel sounds are supposed to be in those words. And so the schwa is one of those vowels in Hebrew. It is written as a kind of, looks like a colon, it's like two dots, and it's written below the letter. And it's when you're pointing Hebrew, that's what you do. The thing about it is that it isn't actually a schwa that, like what we talk about when we talk about a schwa in English. And if you look at today's thumbnail, and I'm going to put that up so I can use it to illustrate what we're talking about, you'll see there's a thing that looks like an upside down E. That upside down E is the symbol for a schwa. And a schwa in English is a unstressed vowel. It's a toneless vowel, and it's a neutral vowel. And it happens a lot in English, except it gets written as one of the five vowel sounds, five main, kind of main vowels that we use in English, but it's not pronounced that way. It's pronounced as a neutral, toneless, unstressed vowel. And so when you take the stress off of a syllable, a lot of times that the vowel in that syllable will become a schwa. So, for example, we were talking about permits and permit. When permit becomes permit, the first E in permit becomes a schwa. So it's all of a sudden permit. Did you hear that? It's an sound. And that's the schwa. It's very, if you don't speak a language that has schwas, true schwa vowels. The funny thing about it is that in Hebrew, the schwa sound isn't the same as what we call the schwa in um, English. So, for example, it's either neutralizes the vowel completely, like schwa, like just sh, the w, a w sound, so without any interposed vowels. So it's either that or there's a more of an s sound and less of a sound. So it's a little bit more of a less of a neutral vowel than it is in the schwa when we talk about it in English. English also has a very special, what is called a vowel coloring, that you see with schwas at, say, the end of words. And that is the R colored vowel. Like the schwa, there are not a lot of languages that have R colored vowels in them. Of languages spoken by hundreds of millions of people, Mandarin and English are the two that have R colored vowels. And I'll give you an example. Er. The is a R colored schwa. And on our thumbnail for today, you can see there's that circle with 16 dots. That just means that there's no vowel in there. But the symbol to the right, which is that kind of hook-like thing on the right-hand side of the circle, you can add that to a schwa where where the bar comes across, and you get an R-colored schwa. Let me give you an example of the R-colored schwa in a word. And that word is a favorite of Life's Potluck Buffet, Lincolnshire. Whenever you end a word with that sound, then what you've got there is an R-colored schwa. And it's basically what's happening there is that normally the schwa sound is simply and the color of that vowel comes from basically describes its frequencies. And usually there's a kind of formula for vowel sounds and all sounds where there might be different frequencies present in that sound. So in the case of schwa, there are 3 frequencies. And when you rhoticize the schwa, the top frequency, the highest frequency, drops down. So it goes from to You can hear that there's that little bit of drop in my voice when I say as opposed to and that's the R coloring happening. And I said rhoticize because that's rhoticize means to have an R, the R sound from the Greek letter rho, which is R. So and we can get into the rhotic and non-rhotic dialects, like Boston accent, for example, being a good example of a non-rhotic accent because R's are either dropped or they are included in places where they normally don't get introduced. For example, in the dialects of New York City, Boston, and New England, in many of the New England dialects, you might say idea instead of idea. That R gets introduced in places where there is no R, and that's because in places where there is an R at the end of a word, that gets dropped. So, for example, in a New York City dialect, you might say mirror for the general American English mirror, where there's the R has a final sound. And that's because traditional New York City dialects, as is the case in New England and also in parts of the southern United States, are non-rhotic dialects. So dialects that tend to drop those R's, even in internal places. And the same thing is true in Southwest England. An accent of London, for example, you can, and in the received pronunciation, the kind of upper crusty sounding pronunciation of British English, you have, again, the dropping of the R's. And in fact, it's believed that the reason that the dialects of the eastern coastal dialects in the United States tend to be non-rhotic is because they were under the influence of contact with the development of the non-rhotic dialects of southwestern England, and that had some influence on that. That's what's thought to be the case. Well, since we've been talking about R-colored values, let's see what the cards say about how we can color our lives. Oh, you'd like that? Color our lives. See what I did there, where I, instead of R-colored vowels, I had color our lives. Anyway, let's see what the cards have to say. So, yellow lemons, blue dumplings, magenta noodles. Cards, tell us some things. All right, let's see what is on top here. Oh, here we go. It's say I am rather than I could be. When you're considering a work identity, make it a goal to say convincingly and calmly to yourself and others, I am X and I do X, rather than I could be X, I could do X. So today, when you have a moment, say one work identity that you would have said I could to, and now say I am. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow on Life's Potluck Buffet.